Friends, Miles here, and today I want to talk with you about my Moog Mother-32 patch. I really like this patch because it's a mixture of sequencing the Mother-32 and actually playing it live using this keyboard down here. And I got a lot of questions from people asking what the settings are. So I thought in this video, I just give you a little rundown, and maybe also if you're using some other synthesizers, you get some ideas on not only patching, but also setting up your synth in a way that it suits you. So let's get right into it. So first, let's run through the synthesizer settings before we get into the patching here on the right-hand side. I have some fixed values which are always set, which I don't touch, and then I have some others which I like to change all the time, basically. Let's start with the fixed settings. So what I like to do, I set the frequency at around noon to just have a C. I tune it with Ableton so that I know that if I play a C here, that this root note is actually, that it matches with a C. Then I'm nearly all the time using a saw wave. I just like saw wave waveforms, so this is always set to saw. Then the VCO mod source is always set to the envelope generator. The tempo gate length I don't use at all because I don't use the internal sequencer. And then, VCO mod amount is set to 0 because I'm not using it. It's a pitch modulation. So yeah, I'm not using it this way, but I'm using it with the patch bay. Then the resonance, the filter resonance is set to here around somewhere between this and that. I don't like it when it's too high because it gets this nosy sound, which I don't like so much, so I rather like to keep it down somewhere here. A slight amount is okay, but that's basically it. VCA mode is set to envelope generator. The volume is always set to here because this is the way I set it up in Ableton. The VCF amount is somewhere slightly below noon, you would say at 11 maybe, and I just like it when it's not too strong, because then basically the filter cutoff doesn't have such a big impact anymore. But if it's at 0, of course, then you can hear more of the filter cutoff. But I like to have it just around here is fine for me, and then just bring the cutoff a little bit down. I'm always using a low pass filter, so this is also set down. And yeah, with the LFO waveform, I'm using a triangle nearly all of the time because, yeah, I just don't like the square too often. But this is just my current setup, so it might change in the future, but this is just how I set it up right now. And yeah, VCF mod polarity is set to plus. And yeah, I think these were all of my fixed settings, and now let's go into the settings that I actually like to tweak while I'm playing the synth. Now we're getting to the playable parts of the synthesizer, and this is actually where the real fun starts. So I just recently released a video on how I create my ARPs, where I also use the Mother-32 as an example. I can also link it to you somewhere up here. And there I already talked about this concept of having some fixed parameters and some which are actually my my playing parameters that I can change on the fly to make the sounds more interesting. So the general thought of the synthesizer is that I have some ARPs playing. I'll just feed an ARP in here that comes from Ableton. So I'm using this synth for ARPs, and there, yeah, I change some settings on the fly. The settings that I most of the time change is, of course, the filter cutoff to add energy or remove energy. The amp envelope, or basically the envelope which also here in this case affects the filter I use. I make the attack time longer, or the decay time, or both, to make it even more interesting. Then I use the mix knob to add noise. To add energy, it's really nice to go quite high with the mix, but usually I like it somewhere around here, that it just adds a slight amount of noise. And if I go higher, you can hear that the noise is getting more noticeable. Also, I think it sounds very beautiful. Yeah, that's actually some of the parameters I like to use when I'm playing the synth from Ableton, so that it's sequenced and I'm not playing anything by myself. In live situations, I also like to play the synthesizer by myself, and therefore I nearly all the time use it in sustain mode. Basically, this is where I turn the sustain switch on when it's not played with ARPs, and then, yeah, I can basically play the synth on top of other instruments that are currently playing in my live jam. And there I tried to also use this switch a lot, which is basically switching the VCF mod source. So right now the filter modulation is coming from the envelope generator, which is this one, and it basically leads to the filter just being modulated by this M shape. So for example, if I make the attack slower, you can also hear the filter opening up slower basically than if I just have it set here, then the filter is basically already at the value that I set the cutoff to. But the cool thing is that you can also switch that and set it to LFO, and now the filter cutoff is controlled by the LFO, which you can hear right now. And this is something I really like to use for live jams, because it also, I like to use the Moog together with a microcosm, and then the microcosm creates all these little artifacts, and here the Moog then plays on top of that. And I think this is a really, really nice way to build something up. In my live set, I used it for the intro part, which was nice. And yeah, you could also use it in a breakdown session. It's just very cool because this patch here is quite versatile and you can play around with that. In this patch, I'm also using the glide knob. Usually it's sitting somewhere around here. So between, what time is that? 8 and 9. And here I like to also bring it up so that the notes are nicely sliding into each other. Yeah, also a very nice way to bring more movement into the sound and to make everything more lively. And yeah, these are basically my playable parameters that I use here on the Mother-32. And let's quickly go through the patch cables here before my camera battery dies, but I hope we can make it in time. So I'm using the VC knob to basically have two different mixes. The first one is just the plain signal that you are hearing all the time. And then if I turn this one here, all the way over. Sorry, I need to reduce the LFO time. You can hear it now. We have this very cool rising effect, which I also like to use for intros and play live. And here I'm like with the sustained sound, I'm also using the filter cutoff to control basically how much energy it has. I'm using the LFO rate. Control the amount of chaos, basically, you could say. And then I'm using also here the mix control to control how much this is actually affecting the sound. And then back to mix number 1. We just have the plain sustained sound. And the way how I achieve it is actually I tried a lot around with the patch cables because I'm not very familiar with patching. So I just tried out different settings and this is what really worked for me. So I'm using the VC mix out and go into the multiplier to have it go to two different destinations. The first one here is then I send it to this VCO1 volt per octave, which basically makes this high pitch and low pitch so that the sound has this high range. Then I'm using the second one to send it to the mix CV to also control the movement. And then I have another cable here sending the LFO triangle to the mix number 2 so that it's already affecting it. So here you don't hear any LFO. And the more I bring it in, yeah, you can really hear how the LFO starts to manipulate the sound. This way I don't have to change here the VCF mod source to LFO. I can just have basically everything that's going on mix number 2 is affected by the LFO rate, which is cool and gives me more opportunities to further shape the sound. And yeah, that's what the Moog Mother-32 patch that I currently use for my music looks like. I hope it was kind of understandable. If you have any questions around that, feel free to ask me that in the comments. I'm always happy to chat with you guys. And yeah, till then, also in the comments, let me know what you want to see next. I'm currently still working on my hybrid setup. You can see maybe here in the background Ableton. But yeah, always happy to hear your inspiration. And now I'm wishing you a lot of inspiration, great fun creating music, and see you in the next video. Peace.